ladies. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Perspectives with Sherry. I am your host, Sherry Ryan, and today we have a very special guest. Before I get into introducing her to you, and I'm going to, what I would like for you to know that this, if you're new, this is a safe space for women in midlife. And over here, we talk about health, wealth, and empowerment, and all the wonderful things that feed into those three amazing topics. So now I want to introduce to you my special guest. So, Heather Brayshaw, she is a dynamic leader, a speaker, and a coach with over 20 years of experience in human resources and the banking industry. Her professional journey is marked by resilience, bold pivots, and deep passion for empowering women to lead with confidence and authenticity. But Heather's story extends beyond boardrooms and leadership trainings. She's also a proud mother of two adult daughters. Her motherhood journey has shaped how she leads, how she overcomes, and how she shows up in every space she's in. After facing unexpected career transitions and personal loss, Heather stepped out in faith to build something new, coaching women through leadership, imposter syndrome, and life's inevitable pivots. She believes leadership isn't just about titles, it's about purpose, influence, and legacy, both in the workplace and at home. And I want to personally welcome you, Heather. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence on Perspective to Sherry. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So we're gonna get into the interview, y'all. But what I wanted to let you all know, in May, because it was the month of Mother's Day, I wanted to highlight some absolutely amazing women that are mothers but that have navigated through the things that we all have to navigate through, particularly in careers, in health, life, all different facets of life. And Heather was amazing because when I spoke with her, the first thing that resonated with me was the power of the pivot. And listen, as women in midlife, we know statistically there is more life behind us that's in front. You know what I mean? And so when you find yourself in a stagnant state or, wanting to do something, now is the time. And I was so inspired by her story. She is the one, and I want you all to listen, and then I want you to think about yourself where you're at now. And so this is part two of my Journey Through Motherhood series, but we are focusing on the power of the pivot. So, Heather, again, I thank you so much for being here. And so we're going to get into the interview. So let's start by grounding this in your story. Tell us about your journey through motherhood. What has raising two daughters taught you about yourself?
When I was a little girl, I always loved to play house. I wasn't a Barbie girl as much as I loved playing house. And my just goal in life was to become a mom. I didn't care if I had a career. I, you know, I just had the dream of the Prince Charming and the family.
Mhm.
And we ended up. I had my first daughter at 20. I'm almost 24, and I wanted to be a younger mom. That I know a lot of people my age, my generation, our generation, some of them wanted to wait. They wanted to have experiences first, but I wanted to be a young mom, and that worked out that way. So our oldest was born in '99, and I was. It was the best thing ever. I could not have been more thrilled with being a mom, and I loved everything about it. She was an easy baby, which really helped,
Mhm.
because when you have she wasn't too, colicky or anything like that. But she was my little buddy. I mean, we always talked to the girls like they were little adults, and they always kind of conducted themselves that way. But at that time, I had not completed my college degree. I'd gone for a while, didn't graduate yet, decided to take a break from that and went to work. And I wanted to get back into it. I only had 10 classes to go to finish. And I'm like, I'm so
Mhm.
close. I can't not finish. And
Right.
at that point too, our daughter was 18 months old, and I thought this is the perfect time. And I want to set that example. Even though she was little, I wanted to set that example. So I did go back, finished, got my degree, and then I got into a job at a local bank and into a management training program. And then not long into that, we found out we were going to have our second daughter. And again, absolutely thrilled that I was going to be a mom again. And she was born um, on time, although both my pregnancies were difficult. So at that point, we were like, okay, two's enough. And I just love being a mom. I just thought, even though I always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, for one, I learned that I would not have been productive or happy being a full-time
Right.
stay-at-home mom. And I always thought, if I'm going to work, I'm going to get a career that I love, and I
Mhm.
want to show my girls that they can do whatever they set their mind to do.
Mhm.
And I transitioned parts of my job. I had to be there very early. They had to flex with that, and they were champs. But I just always wanted them to understand that they could do whatever they wanted to, that they could take care of themselves, and that they didn't have to settle for less than what they wanted. And
Mhm.
that was just very important to me.
Yes, yes. Yeah. No, that's amazing. I love that. As a mother of, I have one daughter, but I agree. Society tells our daughters that, they have to do more and, bust that glass ceiling or whatever. And I always wanted to be that example for mine as well. And I applaud you. I really do for doing that for your daughters because a lot of times as moms, we go through our struggle in trying to climb the ladder, but we don't think about how we, pour into them. They're watching
Mhm.
us, but are they? You know what I mean? And
Yep.
so, yeah, so I applaud you for that. So, as a mother of adult children, how has your role evolved over time? And this is so important because so many of us struggle. Like, it was cute, right? When it was still hard, but when we could tuck them in and we
Yep.
knew they were in bed and their bedtime was good, we could just go do us. And let's talk to the audience about how your role as a mom has evolved as your children have become adults.
Yes, I remember when they were little, and I would say to like a mom with older children, I just can't wait till they're a little bit older, when they can,
Yes.
do things, and they're like, it doesn't get any easier. And I'm like, it's got to get easier. No, it didn't. And so, like I said, we just always talked to our girls. We treated them like little adults at whatever level they were on. And we just involved them in conversations and took them everywhere because we thought they're not going to behave themselves if they don't know how to. Now, you know, the second one, there were times I'm like, maybe she just stay home while I go get groceries because she didn't have the patience for it, and I get it. But you know, you have to. This is where I think that being a mother is like being a leader. Depending on what stage, similar to where someone is in their career, you have to be willing to adjust your style. I think you still have your expectations of your children, and you still set the rules and the boundaries, but you parent the both of my two girls. We parent them differently because they're different people. What worked for one didn't work for another.
Right.
Our youngest ended up diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when she was 7, and that was a shift.
Mhm.
That was a shift for the whole family, and you had to worry about how that impacted the older daughter. But we always tried to trust them, explain to them that you have our trust until you don't. It was helpful that, I was involved in a lot of the community things at the bank where I worked. And so I would always I'd see people everywhere I would go. There'd be people that I know, and they were like, everybody. I'm like, yeah. So if you ever do anything, I'll find out. and,
I love that.
and I would tell them, you may not know that I know, but
Mhm.
sometimes I know that. So I don't know if that worked or not. They were still teenagers and everything, but they were very well behaved, mature, and they really didn't give us a lot of trouble or anything. I mean, the normal things, but wasn't they were pretty easy to parent. And now that
Mm-hmm.
they're adult women, though, that's what's hard, to the degree that I want them to back to be my babies. My youngest just got married a couple weeks
Mm.
ago,
Congrats.
and thank you. It was a wonderful day. Couldn't be happier with her husband and his family. But I was not prepared for the emotions, because she hasn't lived with us for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
But all of those unexpected things, and it hits you, and you're trying to keep it together. You don't want your makeup to run, but the girls and I were always really close, and we still are. And she, at the wedding, after they did the father-daughter dance, they said she wants to do a dance with her mother, and I was like,
Oh.
sobbed, ugly cried, all of the things.
I
And
would have
somebody
too.
took a picture of us dancing, and they said, "This just makes me cry. You can see the love." I think that's a compliment to both her and me, because they're my world. I mean, always have been and always will. But
Mm-hmm.
now they're more like, like friends, and I
Right.
enjoy hearing their perspective on things. Especially now, this has become very real to me with the work world, and also with them, is hearing this generation's perspectives. I welcome their input because it's so
Mhm.
different. And now I see the generational difference. I do find myself sometimes saying, well, that's not how we did it, but I
Right.
stop myself. But I like to hear their opinion as adult women, and hear what they have to say, and get their input, and hear how they like to do things. It does. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm obviously not going to always agree, but they
Right.
can do what they want, and I support them, and I want them to know that I'm there for them, but I want them to do their own thing as well. And I try not to speak up when it's unsolicited, but if it was going to hurt them, I would. But you know,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I love that because like myself, at work, I find myself like, each year I work for the government, and so I work in an area where we have like engineering support, logistics, and I am program management. So every year they recruit, and they go to colleges and they recruit. So each year we get these brand new engineers that are the same ages or younger than my children. And I'm just like, when I first started, I was like, I was the young one. And now
yep,
I'm just like, you are younger than my kids.
yeah,
But you know what? What you said was powerful because if you take your perspective from your daughters as a leader, right? So then we can understand better
hmm,
how when the younger ones come in the workforce, you know what I mean? Like their perspective or whatever. And everybody's different. So I'm not saying it's a generalization. What I'm saying is, as I do, that this new generation is very, very different than how we did
hmm,
things, right? So when you're tuned in that way, I think that's amazing. And that's something that I hope that the audience listens to. And, like just because there are children and we have the parent child dynamic, they have a voice.
hmm,
We should listen, and it's powerful because actually it could be very impactful in the way that we navigate in this next step in our professional journey. So
yep,
amazing.
yes.
Think that was amazing.
I think it's easy too to, especially if there are children, to look at them and
Mhm.
say, "They're young. What do you know?"
Right.
And I think back, and I did not, I didn't like them. Like, I know what I'm talking about, though. Just because I'm young doesn't mean I don't know things.
Same.
So I ask their opinion, or how would you do this today? Do this, or
Mhm.
what do you think about this? And listen to them, and they are. I'm always so impressed with not just my girls, but I have a couple of young women that directly report to me, and they're in that same age range. And
Mhm.
I'm like, if I am going to give them the courtesy, the people that report to me, that work with me, the courtesy of hearing them, and treating them like an equal, why would I not do that for my own children, who I know how they have been raised? you know?
Exactly. I agree.
And so I welcome that opportunity to help them feel seen and understood and respected. And so I
Yeah.
think that's a great opportunity for us to be able to acknowledge what they bring to the table.
Agreed. Agreed. And bridge the gap. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because we are the ones that, we're leaders right now, but, we're leaving a legacy. They'll be
Hmm.
the ones that'll pick up the charge when we decide to retire, leave, or whatever. And like that's not just in business, that's in life, right? So we
Yep.
should give them a voice. And I love that. I love that for you. That you acknowledge that, and I hope more of us do that.
Yes.
So, what values or lessons do you hope your daughters carry forward from watching you navigate life seasons? That's a good one,
It is, and I'm glad you sent me that ahead of time. I had to think about it a little bit, but,
right?
you know, every I think every generation wants to do things different. They want whatever they didn't like when they were parented, they don't wanna do.
Hmm.
Or whatever they saw their parents do, they're like, "I'm not gonna do it that way." I expect that, and I'm like, "Go do better than whatever I did," you know? I know that there are things that the girls probably are like, "Yeah, we wouldn't do it that way." For instance, like I said, I did a lot of community work that was the bank that I worked for is big on that. And we gave of our time. And so I would make them come with me to volunteer for things. And they eventually grew to like it. But I didn't realize that because I loved my job, what I was doing and what I do now. And so if I love it, I'll put, 25 hours a day into it sometimes. And I didn't think anything about that because that's just I liked it. It wasn't a hardship for me. But then when I had a situation in 2020, they began making comments like, "Well, you don't have to live your job." And just little things here and there. And it wasn't malicious, but that really made me stop and think of I didn't realize that I took my work home with me so much or that I was that wrapped up in it because it just felt natural to me. So I think they'll probably what I want them to take from that is to find better balance.
Mm,
Um, and I find that at least with my girls, they're good about setting boundaries and they're always on me. Mom, you got to set a boundary.
yeah.
And so they have taught me a lot and I've taken their advice and I've really been trying to apply that. So I want them to take the things that they thought maybe I took too far and I want them to do better. And I want them to learn to set boundaries sooner than I did and learn to trust themselves, sooner than I did.
No, yeah, I love that. I love that. All right. So now we are going to get to some questions that really talk about the power of the pivot.
Yes.
And so you've experienced a few powerful pivots in life. So can you walk us through one that deeply changed you, whether it was personally or professionally?
Yes, I feel like this is definitely a pivotal moment, and pivot has become my word over the past probably 9 months. And I always
Mhm.
joke, say sometimes I pivot so much I end up back in a circle and I get dizzy, but uh, we all, I went, you go through different phases in your career, and there are little moments here and there. But the big one for me was in 2020.
Okay.
Putting the pandemic aside, um, my work was going through some changes and we were going to do some restructuring, which completely made sense. And ultimately, I did a dual role and I was offered a position in the role that I wasn't as interested in. I did HR and marketing, love HR, passionate about that. The marketing I liked, but I didn't have a passion for it. And I was like, it's just not where my heart is. And
Mhm.
so the week before I found out about this, though, my dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer, completely unexpected. No symptoms. He went in to see if he had a hiatal hernia and they found a tumor. And it was at that point, it was not curable. They could treat it, but it wasn't going to ever go away. And so that was week one. The next week, I find out, and I loved my job. Like I said, that's where my whole world was. I wrapped my self worth, my identity, everything was in that. And so I'm like, well, who am I now? So, um, had a couple of months before everything took place. When I left, I didn't have a job lined up. I had some feelers out. I did decide to start a consulting business, and I thought, let's see what I can do with that. And I started working with a local company, a person I knew there. But then right after that, I did get an offer for a job, and I went into a manufacturing company and ultimately got to set up their HR department, which was wonderful opportunity. Um, Dad went through all his treatments, also was my youngest daughter's senior year of high school.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, about 11 months after the diagnosis, we lost him. That was
Sorry.
extremely impactful, though. I mean, my family, we were always close growing up. My dad was, one of a very big role model for me. But we had, he passed, and then a couple of days later, my daughter graduated high school, and it was just a lot going on. It was it was an extremely emotional time where I was trying to figure out who I was, you know, put on weight because of all the stress, and I just was completely lost. I ended up, we ride motorcycles, and some people we rode motorcycles with started to become some really good friends, and then we spent more time with them. So I kept thinking, though, through this entire experience, there's got to be something I've got to learn about this, and that'll come to me someday. I did end up switching jobs. An opportunity came up, and it got me closer to home. So I took that as with the local government, setting up their HR department. But my heart was at my at the employer that I had left, and I
Mhm.
kept looking for opportunities. And one day I had a realization that I didn't like my job as much as I thought that I would. It wasn't as challenging for me. And I thought, I'm just going to see what's out there. And there was a job opening back in HR. And I was like, oh my gosh, do I go for it? And so I was like seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, because a lot of things had, the emotional growth and realizing what it came out of that is I realized I can't put all my eggs in one basket, put my worth in my job, because there's more to life than a job. And I did all this extra stuff trying to be seen, chasing that title that never came, and focusing on the wrong things. And it ended up, it was kind of sacrificing my health, my family time, all that stuff.
Mhm.
So what I've taken from that is, you know, be true to myself, not sacrifice what I need and want for the good of others. And that's honestly one thing that I've learned from my girls too, is they'll be like, no, I'm not, you just should put up with that. And I'm like, really? You don't think I should? Because I do feel like our generation was raised differently.
Oh,
In work,
definitely.
the work, we were coming off of being raised by learning from women who came before us, who had to sacrifice a lot to
Mhm.
get to where they were, and they paved the way for us. So, that was how I conducted myself. And the change in the way we do things in the work world over the past 5 years has been amazing. So basically, kind of what I've taken out of that, it kept staying in the back of my mind, was I need to take this out, and I need to share what I've learned to other
Yes.
women who haven't gotten that message yet. I did get hired back at the business where, I had left. I'm back there now. Love working there, and I decided to pivot my consulting business. And now I'm moving towards a path of where, I want to work with women to kind of help them overcome the things that I overcame. So it's a lot. I know I just threw a lot at you, but
No, I think you know what? I think that's great. Like that's what I'm trying to get at. Like I love how when life throws you challenging things personally or professionally, you go through things, and when you are in tune with yourself, right? So they help you to grow as the person that you're designed to be, and pull you further into your purpose, right? And
yep.
so I love how your story, which is what resonated with me, that with the loss of your father, who was an amazing figure in your life and your family's life, the job situation, but you didn't let it break you, right?
Yep.
It pulled you higher. And that's what I want to give to my audience. That's what the power pivot is, and that's what life, when I say life, it's gonna,
Hmm.
but how you react to it, how you receive it, is very, very powerful. You can choose one or two paths, and your story resonated with me because you took that and made it something so beautiful, and so powerful, and you're giving back, and I love that. um so we're going to get further in the interview, and some of these questions could be redundant. If so, we will say, you know what, I've already answered that, and we're going to move along. But I'm I really, like I said, the reason that I wanted to highlight your story is because I think that more women need to understand that. Look, when lives, like had someone not had your foresight or your potential for growth, they could have been stuck in that, oh, well, okay, well, this is all I'm good for. So I'll take this job that was given to me and I'll work that, you know what I mean? But I'm not happy, but maybe it's not about happiness. I'm just going to get this paycheck and my girls are watching me, but look, at least they know that, I'm earning. No, it's bigger than that. It's
Yeah.
so much bigger than that, right?
Yep.
And so that was the story that I wanted to share, because I really feel like as women, we sell ourselves very short,
Hmm.
because we
We do.
do hold so many roles. And so
Yep.
I admire you and you inspire me. So I wanted to share your story.
Thank you.
So for our next question, and we really have touched on this, so I'm going to read it, but I'm going to say that I think we really have covered it. But it said that you've spoken about the loss of your father and how did that impact your perspective on life and parenting? If there's something you want to add.
I think the only thing is, when he passed, I felt very strongly that I needed to do a eulogy for him. I'm a
Mm,
lot like my dad, and as I
mhm,
get older, I see that more. When I interviewed for the job at the bank when I first came out of college, I didn't want that job. I wanted a job in pharmaceutical sales, and that's what I was chasing. Again, it was the money. And when I got offered the job at the bank, I'm like, all right, it'll be good for now. He's like, honestly, I see you doing this. I think
mm,
this is, and so I wanted to honor him with the eulogy. That was probably one of the hardest things I ever did, but I felt like that was what I needed to do for him. Each of my sisters, there was a role we played during the
mm,
process when he was sick and his passing, and it was kind of nice to see. Okay, at this point, this sister steps in, and this sister and we came together. And so, again, taking something that's negative or that's unpleasant, to go through, I've just always tried to find the positives and to
mhm.
focus on, okay, what can I actually change? Because why am I going to spend my time worrying about something that I can't change or
Amen.
control?
Amen.
So, that's a lot of, kind of what came out of that part of the journey. And my husband was an
Mhm.
absolute rock for me, and very patient with my emotions, and um, just, you know, couldn't
That's
have asked for
important.
better.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's important. The support system is amazing.
hmm.
Um, and I think that that was beautiful that you had the strength to do that. That's hard, but in knowing what he left you in the legacy, that you wanted to share that, and I love that as well. In what ways did motherhood become an anchor or motivator during life's harder transitions? And again, we have touched on it. And so if you want to say, you know what, I pretty much covered that, cool. Because I think you kind of have. But if you have
Yeah,
anything to add, yeah, I think we've covered that one.
yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think
That right.
yeah.
Okay. All right. So now let's do this. Let's pivot into confidence, calling, and career. Okay. So this one, okay, so you work with women around leadership and stepping into confidence. How does your experience as a mom inform the work you do?
um, One of the things I first had an aha moment of early in my career was the first time I became a manager.
Hmm.
And, you know, probably most places, you get promoted into a role because you did well in the previous role, but that doesn't necessarily mean if you're into management that you know how to manage. And there was a lot of things I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Um, so I'm like, but somebody thinks that I can do it. So we're going to figure this out. So I quickly realized that being a leader, or managing people is like being a parent. You have to be fair or consistent. You have
Hmm.
to follow through. And I think that's kind of like the biggest thing that set the stage for me for going forward. Um, so I would usually think, like, okay, well, how am I going to handle this situation? How would I do? What would I do with my kids? Or
Right.
just kind of looked at these people like they were like kind of like how you are your kids. You want them to be successful. So you give them the feedback, even if it's not always pleasant. You give them that respect of having a conversation with them. And one of the reasons I was drawn to HR was because I welcomed opportunities to have tough conversations. And I'm a non-confrontational person, but
Mhm.
in the work world, I always looked at that as an opportunity to try to put the other person at ease and view it as a truly collaborative conversation. And I tried to do that with the girls as well. um, as a mother, I'll let them weigh in on whether that was successful or not, but that's just always what I strived to do, would always try to think, um, what would I do with this as a parent. And
Mhm.
so, you know they do pair well nicely.
Good, good. One of the biggest things in leadership, and I found it, I had the opportunity to do a leadership training program, and I graduated, whatever. One of the biggest things, and that I've noticed as myself as a leader, and then as the folks that have been in leadership roles in my life, particularly professionally, maybe not so much, maybe even personally, but conflict resolution is a big one. And you touched on it. It's like, what would you tell your children, right? Because you love them and you want to set them up for success, right? And so when people shy away from conflict resolution, that's a huge part of being a leader, right?
Yep.
And I don't understand. I think here's a tidbit. I'm gonna say it, and I'm not gonna take it back. Honestly, women do it better than men, and I think that probably because of the fact of our I mean, not all of them are mothers, but our nurturing aspect, and the fact that
Yep.
a lot of us are mothers. So what you
Mhm.
said was huge. Huge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you, and I do think sometimes it's hard for men when they're managing women. Um,
Yes.
that's where I see that there a lot of the struggle is. Well, I don't want to be mean, or whatever. Now,
Hmm.
I've worked with some men that are really good at it, and but you're right. For the most part, it's a lot of times the women leaders that are a little more willing, and I think it's just how they view it.
Right.
But I've almost I joke and say, I've made it a skill of being able to give bad news in a good way.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I have a coworker. She's like, if I ever have to be fired, please let Heather do it because I feel like I would feel like I wouldn't feel so bad about it, And I was like, that's high praise. But
It is.
it's one of those things where if you find a way that you can do it, there's always a good way to say something that's harsh in a
Hmm.
nice way that is not gonna put somebody on the defensive. And I don't always do it perfect. I had a conversation here a while back and immediately put the person on defensive, and I'm like, "We gotta roll this back here because I didn't do that well." So I did. I
Right.
backpedaled, reframed it, said the same thing
Hmm.
differently, and the
Hmm.
conversation proceeded much better.
Okay.
So, it's definitely important.
It is huge. It is very, very huge. Okay. So this is an absolute huge one. What advice would you give to women who feel like it's too late to pivot or rediscover themselves?
Girl, it is never too late. That's
Right.
Let me just tell you, this is also part of my whole journey. I don't know if this journey will ever end, but you know, last summer I started thinking about the structure of how I have my consulting business because that's kind of a side thing.
Hmm.
And I was working with small businesses or nonprofits that didn't have an HR department or have a need for full-time HR. And it wasn't really lighting a fire within me. And so I started thinking like, what can I do different with this? So I decided to jump on TikTok. Wow, what a world. You think people are just out there posting for random things for just to post. There's a whole lot more behind it than that.
Hmm.
But I started out thinking maybe I'd get into like some digital marketing types of things. But I ended up starting to do going live. I didn't know that was a thing. So I started to do that. I'm like, I have no idea what this is going to be. But here's where not taking that leap, no matter what age you are, I'm going to be 50 this year. Um, I attract women of like-minded women. Like that's how that algorithm works. And
Yes.
so I decided to, I was like, okay, how am I going to do this live thing? I was doing evenings. That wasn't always great because that's not where my energy is. So I decided I'm going to get ready for work, and just talk to people because I got to get up and get ready for work. I work from home, but I still don't want to, I don't want to look like a slob. And that will keep me distracted so I don't feel silly looking at the screen talking to myself.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I started to do. And slowly the room started to build. And again, I would focus on the numbers of people in there and I would get discouraged when there weren't very many. But then when I would put that aside, I'd be like, just focus on showing up, focus on the habits. Then everything else falls in line. And every time I saw myself going back, focusing on the numbers, I would remind myself of that pivot, shift. And so that has this past 9 months has been a very eye opening. It's what gave me the confidence to say, you know what, I do have something to share that people want to hear, because the audience and the community that I have connected with, these women are amazing. I've had the opportunity to meet three of them in person, and they're just as wonderful in person as they are, when we're talking on cameras. And it basically that's been the final thing I needed to get over my imposter syndrome. You
Mm-hmm.
know, if and that's what I always say, just because this group of people don't want to hear what you have to say doesn't mean everybody doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's days where I feel like I don't always have a topic. I mean, we go in, I put my makeup on, and we just chit chat about whatever. And some days, though, if it's on my heart that I feel like I need to say something that to hopefully inspire people, and then that the chat will come up, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, I needed to hear this today. I needed
Yes.
to," and that just always surprises me that because I love to try to help people encourage and to help them see the best in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a huge leap. There's a lot of us in that age range that are taking that leap of trying to put ourselves out there on in TikTok world, and it's scary, but it has actually been a very positive experience. And I actually got recently got the opportunity to set up. They have agencies for people who go live. I'm like, that's a thing, and they try to help you grow and whatever. And I got the opportunity to submit an application to be considered to have my own agency, and it got approved. So I've set up my own agency. It's starting to take off, but I wouldn't have done it if I didn't have the community that I did. That was like,
Right.
we're here to support you. You can do, we can do this. So you never know what you're going to find if you put yourself out there. Do it. Just take that one little step. Just start slowly, and
Mm-hmm.
build on that. But don't ever be afraid of it because we're never too old. I'm going to be the woman at 75 that's going to be like, I'm going to go dye my hair pink and I'm going to go do a weightlifting
Yes. I
competition.
love it. Yes. I
I just,
love.
I'm never afraid to try something new. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Okay,
So,
right, exactly. Okay, and that's what I'm talking about. Like, so the fact that you said that, because this and that resonates with me. I'm new to podcasting, but um, you can't get caught up on the numbers because here's the thing: if you reached one woman, 5, 10, 20, then you are doing what you're supposed to do. And the reason that the things are happening the way they are for you is you are in perfect alignment of your calling. And it is so inspiring to watch women, which is why I got into this. Like your whole story and where you are now, it's so inspirational. And that's what I want to share with my audience.
mhm,
Because, like you said, you would get caught up in the numbers and then you would feel like, oh, okay, well, no. And then, you get the feedback. And then from there, you've created this agency where you're helping other women or other people. And
mhm.
it is outstanding. And that is what we are simply here to do.
Yep.
And it is
Mhm,
so great to watch people go from A, B, C, D and become or within their calling and they're still
mhm.
becoming. And that's
Yes.
what I love about age group. You're turning 50. Tomorrow I turn 52.
Yes. Happy
That
birthday.
thank you. And listen, it always every time I meet someone and we agree to do an episode or whatever, they pour into me
Mhm.
and I'm going to keep on with this journey because I feel
Yep.
like it is to help someone and it's stories like yours that resonates with other women, other people,
Mhm.
period. So
Yep.
thank you. Okay. We have two more questions.
Okay.
And then we are going to get into talking about the exciting things that you have going on and how we can support you. So, all right. So, what's something you wish you had known earlier in your motherhood journey? This ties back to my series of journey through
Hmm.
motherhood. It's that job where you don't get a handbook. So,
Yeah.
mhm,
Yep. You know, this actually, I've been thinking about this a lot here lately because my nephew and his wife just had a baby, and people I work with and all that. And with my daughter getting married, I wish that when people would tell me to enjoy every minute of it because it
mhm,
goes fast. I wish I would have
mhm,
believe that because when you're in the moment, when your kid's throwing a temper tantrum, or they're up late, or whatever, the issue is, you feel like it's never going to end, and
mhm.
it does, and it gets better. And so I wish I could have had the perspective that I do on that now
Yeah.
back then. It would have
Right.
been, and it probably, I mean, now I understand too why, when we become grandparents and our kids say to us, "Why are you so patient with them?" I'd be like, "Because they practiced on you."
Right. Right.
You know? So, I hope to be, I try not to say those, I try not to say to young moms, "It'll be fine. It'll get better," because, I didn't want to hear that.
Mhm.
I wanted to experience some of that for myself. But if they ask or they say, "I don't know how to do this or get through this," that's when I'm like, "Let me just help you out here, girl.
Yeah.
Let me
Yeah.
tell you, it will
Yeah.
be okay.
It
You will be
it
fine."
really will. I promise
Yes.
it will. Yes. I
Yes.
agree with you. All right. And so my last question to you is what would you say to women watching right now who's standing at the edge of their own pivot but feeling afraid to take that first step? And we did talk about that with the question earlier. Just last minute thoughts on that. You're speaking
Mhm.
to her now. She's watching. So what do you want to
Yeah.
tell her, Heather?
I always tell people who are like, "I don't know," find the person somebody that you trust or that you
Mhm.
admire, and ask them, what should I do to get started, you don't have to go all in right away. This is coming
Right.
from somebody who goes way over the top with everything I do. But, I remind myself of that. You don't have to go all in, just start something. When I started this whole TikTok thing, I had no idea what I was going to do with it, or why I was doing the different things I did. But over the time, the purpose became more and more clear, and that's
Mhm.
because I shared it with people. I asked questions. I researched. I tried different things. You just try one little thing. If it's a
Mhm.
big thing, okay, let's take it back a little bit. What's one part? It's like, if you're trying to change your eating habits, you don't have to do all the things. Just cut out soda or whatever. Start
Right.
small, and
Mhm.
focus on the habits. That's the big thing I always tell my audience. Focus on the habits, quality over quantity.
Amen. Amen. That's huge. That's
Yes.
huge. All right. So now we are at the part where I want to tell you that, first of all, thank you again for sharing your story and for sharing with us on Perspectives with Sherry. It was amazing, as I knew it would be.
Thank you. I appreciate
And yes. And so at this point, what I would love for you to do is talk about your platform, what you got going on, and how we can support you.
it. So I appreciate the opportunity to share this with you because I have so many things that I'm trying to get to, that will be out that people can go to. I've spent most of my time, like I said, building the community in TikTok. And
Hmm.
my handle there is HR Heather, or Ask HR Heather is the at.
Okay.
Um, so that's where I have my largest following. With all the stuff talking about, like, will it be banned or not, whatever. So I have intentions of building a YouTube channel and Facebook page and all of that, website. Um, I've started the process of my first course, which is called Fierce and Fabulous. Um, and it is basically an entry level kind of beginner course, for women. It's a 1 hour, 3 night boot camp. We talk about, I did this superhero quiz. So you take this little quiz and you find out what your superhero type is, and it's dedicated towards women. So, you might be a warrior queen, or you might be a luminary force. So there's all these great names with it. We're going to take that information and build from it. And so we'll talk about how you can leverage those strengths, how you can, set some work-life boundaries, how you face the unique challenges that women face in leadership, because I don't care that it's 2025, there's still challenges. And
Absolutely.
so then I'm going to build from there on, into like a coaching kind of program. But then my agency stuff came up and I was like, okay, I have to put a pause over here. So I'm building that up and getting those things up and running, to be able to get some processes in place, because that can be fairly automated fairly easily. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I actually have also developed, an official method that all of us will tie together. So honestly, right now, coming in and joining me on my lives, I go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern, on HR Heather. And just you can sit in the background and listen. There's people that I never know are there, but they're there. Um, or you can always email me too if you have a question on something, or you want to know how to get more into whatever. But that's where, I spread my message, and I'm out supporting other women creators. I go out and I try to do all the things and do what I can to help them, and ask, what do you need? We did the first training call last night for the agency, and we are predominantly women at this time, not purposely, but there's varying levels of experience with
Mm-hmm.
the live situation. And it's not a traditional training, because we didn't just go through PowerPoint or slides. I like it to be a conversation, and it was really, I thought, beneficial. Maybe they think differently, but so far I've gotten a lot of good feedback on it.
Good.
So, that's a good place to start.
Okay. All right. So you have heard that. And what I will do for those of you that are watching us on YouTube, I'm going to have all that condensed. I'm going to pin that in a pinned comment so that you can benefit from all the things that Heather has going on. If you are listening on the audio podcast, I will have all of that information available for you in the show notes. So now, Heather, I just want to again say thank you. And I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing your story. And that's what it's all about. When
Yep.
we go through things and we grow through things,
Hmm.
it's important that we share that with someone else so we can bring them
Yeah,
along as well. Yeah. So
absolutely.
thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to give you final words, and then we're going to just tell everyone to have a blessed day.
All right. Sounds good.
So, any closing remarks?
Oh, sorry. I thought you said you had final words. You know, everybody's got a story,
Right.
and we all think that we don't, but somebody wants to hear your story, to kind of go along with
Mhm.
what you just said, to finish that out. And it's the little things in life that we go through that change us. So share your story.
Yes.
Tell your story. I love to hear people's stories, and don't be afraid to take what you've learned and do something with it, because somebody needs to hear that, and somebody else is looking for that. So
Mm-hmm.
don't be afraid. Don't be afraid.
Mm-hmm. All right, y'all. So
Yep.
you heard her. She told you, don't be afraid. Remember, I always say, nah, we don't put that off. It starts today.
Yep.
So I hope that you take what you heard here and you apply it to your life and you start today. And remember, at Perspectives with Sherry, we always say, continue to feed your health, build your wealth, and keep walking in power. And until next time, you guys take care of yourselves and come on back for more great content on how we as women can keep pouring into each other. Thank you, sisters.
Bye.
Bye.